there, my super girls? Welcome back to the Hero Whispers. This is your host, Jeannie Marie. Welcome to our world. Welcome to our community of amazing women. We are here to inspire and empower college women to launch from college to life and everything that brings about. Personal branding, networking, career clarity, helping them with money, whatever. We are here to help them, to help the next generation be the best that they can be. And we use our podcast to do that. And we get these very cool women like KRYSS Shane to share in the love. So with no more delay, let me introduce to you Miss KRYSS Shane, author of The Educator's Guide to LGBT and Inclusion. In 2019, KRYSS was named one of the 21 education experts, authors, and blogs to follow. Leading LGBT expert. She's named by the New York Times and many national and international platforms as America's go-to leading LGBT expert. KRYSS Shane, MS, MSW, LSW, LMSW, she, her, has 25 plus years experience guiding the world's top leaders in business, education, and community via individual, small group, and full staff trainings. She is known for making each organization's specific diversity and inclusion needs become more manageable, approachable, and actionable. This includes physical spaces, hiring practices, policies and procedures, and more. KRYSS has 2 master's degrees, 2 licenses to practice mental health care, and she is currently working towards her PhD while shaping the minds of learners as a lecturer at Columbia University and as adjunct professor at Brandman University. She is also an author, as I mentioned earlier, of the Educator's Guide to LGBT and Inclusion, the first book of its kind to guide educators, administrators, and school staff to become able and empowered to make their schools more LGBT inclusive. She is a pioneer. KRYSS, welcome to the show.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I am so thrilled and honored that we can share your knowledge today with the world. And you are doing so many cool things to really make an impact in the world. It is like you should be sainted. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
I mean, really, like, there's not many people out there, like, I mean, there's a lot of people carrying the torch for this movement, don't get me wrong, but and that have your level of expertise, all these degrees, making it happen, walking the walk, talking the talk. I mean, it's pretty awesome. And I guess, I mean, the big question today is, like, how do you get named America's leading go-to LGBT expert? How does that happen? It's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think, in my experience, the way it happens is that you cross your fingers and you pray to all the gods and the deities, and you surround yourself with really expensive crystals because you go into stores and they're shiny and you buy too many. I think that might be how it works.
I know I do a lot of praying too, so hey, I'm a very spiritual person and I just know, but you're putting so much good karma out there. That has to have something to do with it too, right? I mean,
maybe. And then I get so lucky because there's been so many people who have been not just walking but marching for so long, for decades and generations before me, and so many that are doing this at the same time. And I meet these epic level kids who are already kind of on this path. So it's very, very cool when I get to see sort of my name in life. But the thing that keeps me going is all of the people in this whole universe that I get to walk in the footsteps of the people who did this before. And I get to look behind me and see the people who are better because they're walking in these footsteps, and the way that these little kid brains work with the technology they have access to and the knowledge and the kids that come from really supportive families. I'm just glad that I get to hang out in the same room with all of these people.
Well, you're just a humble human because, I mean, first of all, it's fascinating to me that you're so immersed in the community because, especially you're not LGBT yourself, but the empathy that you have for this audience, the passion, the drive, you know, it's incredible. I mean, I don't, you know, like, it's like you're fighting the fight, and it's not even, it's not, you know, a personal thing. It's just that you have such a big heart. I mean,
no, you're so kind. I think a lot of it is just the recognition of how much we're all alike. And there is a lot of time, yes, I specialize in one marginalized community, which then within it has several of its own marginalized communities. But a lot of the conversations aren't really just a thing we do for one group of people. For example, when I give trainings, I talk a lot about the importance of people being allowed to be called the name they use. And in the transgender community, it's often about the difference between someone's biological name maybe being Stephen, but they go by Stephanie or Stacy or Wanda or any name they choose. And that's really important for their gender identity. But that's not really all that different from a lot of people, because we also live in a world where someone named James goes by Jim, or someone named Elizabeth might go by Elizabeth or E or Liz or Beth or Lizzie. So that's not any different. We're not asking the world to do anything different for transgender people than they're already doing when they see someone whose name is Elizabeth, and it's a common question to say, you know, oh, do you go by Elizabeth or Liz or Beth? Or we do that already. It's not any different. Our brains just need to understand that sometimes the answer isn't necessarily as expected. That maybe we say, do you go by Liz or Beth? And the person says, actually, I go by John. But we do that too, because we know plenty of people in our world that go by a nickname that doesn't equate to the birth name they have, or that are somebody the third or the fourth or junior, and so because in their family they go by their middle name. So they have one name on their email address, but the name they go by is different. And that's not anything unique.
Though the message, that's a big idea that you just talked about, okay? So you use the name to describe, but the messages go across verticals or across communities or across categories. I mean, that's a big idea. So instead of getting trapped inside one color or one flavor, like, what's the bigger picture of the message? I mean, I just gave a talk at SCAD this week. It was called The Big Think, and it was about Ebony Flowers. That's a black woman who and she illustrated this book called Hot Comb, and it's all about black females coming of age, like dealing with their hair and how it's, you know, all the community and what they think about their hair and how that, like, really impacts the way they think about themselves and their self-esteem. And we talked about, like, just the fact of empathy and understanding how people think about themselves, and, you know, as they grow and get nurtured in certain communities. And so that's not just true. It's a specific thing with black women's hair and the hot comb, but it's a message, like you said, like it's for everyone, right? I mean, I just to empathize on how certain people are because of how they've been brought up or whatever. And the more you can understand that, the more you can relate to them. So
absolutely, and it's a process because, for example, we saw for a long time, sometimes for the first time with the Me Too movement, that there were male-identified people hearing stories from their loved ones for the first time and realizing, oh, it doesn't matter somebody's height or their race or their age or their fashion sense or where they live or where they go or what time they're out. There are men putting their hands on women unwanted. And all those stories were coming out. And so it became, I didn't realize it was happening. And then it became, this matters because even though I'm male, I have a mother and sisters and nieces and a grandmother and daughters, and that's key and crucial. The next step of that, though, always has to be the recognition that, in that example, women matter not because of how they're related to that man. They don't matter because he can picture his own child's face or his own mother's face. They're just human beings and humans matter. So it's great to look first at how can I connect a brand new idea to ideas I already feel comfortable with, which is great. It's always a great place to start, and it's the way our brains naturally learn anything, any topic at all. It's why when I take a statistics class, none of it makes any sense to me until the professor's nothing. It's all just a completely foreign language to me. But then eventually the professor gets to the part where they start talking about, here's when you would use this in real life. Here's when you would see this in real life. And then I understand, oh, I might use this when I do this. I might see this when I'm reading a thing I'm interested in, which is my first point of connection, which we all do. We just can't ever stop there because it has to grow from here's how something connects to me, which is still focused on me. It's still, that thought process is still all about me, to I can care about something and understand it and support something and vote for something and march for something without it having to be at all about me.
Yeah, I mean, that's big. It's really interesting. But I do see more and more of that happening. More and more of this the next generation, which is like, I don't know, your generation, or maybe right before you, they are feeling these movements and these social causes as their own, to your point, like even though they may not be directly in the community, but they still feel like it's their own message to carry and figure out. I see that, in my teaching and whatnot.
Absolutely, and we've had that. It's a part of all the movements. We know that even though it wasn't common, there were men in the women's suffrage movement. When it was white women getting and working to get the right to vote, there were black people involved in that who knew at the time, even if it works, it won't apply to us. We know that at many, many of the events, all of the events that Martin Luther King put on, and that all of these other organizations that Malcolm X was speaking for, and Audre Lorde was speaking for, there were white people in those audiences who already had the rights and the privileges, but showed up because they understood it wasn't just about them. We know that there are heterosexual people, that there are cisgender people, which is the word that's the opposite of transgender, at Pride events that are showing up because it's not about just them. We know that people have voted for same-sex marriage, even though they were already married to someone of a different gender. It didn't affect their own ability to get married, but they understood that the world was better when everybody could get married. And we're seeing it again, maybe more than ever because we have all this social media, so there's more images and videos. But there's a lot of white faces at Black Lives Matter events.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And so, but what I love about what you're doing is, what I think you're just such a rock star is because you've made a career out of this, and it's not, already like almost like it's not like a career path that's paved. Like you kind of like disrupted, and so you got the degrees, which unbelievable amount of degrees that you have. Like, oh my God. And then you took it, you're taking it to the next level. You wrote the book, and now and you're teaching, and so like you're almost like creating a new industry. You're like pioneering a new way for people to shape their career. So like, what advice would you have to some of our women that maybe want to, follow in your footsteps or, do the same kind of thing?
I think for me, it was not an intention. I was not 13 years old and thinking, I'm going to do something harder. I would say, though, that any of the teachers who knew me as a child would absolutely say that it is not surprising that I took a harder path than necessary. It's just,
That's awesome.
I was just